Intuition is barely more reliable than faith as a method for demonstrating truth. This common sense may feel common because it's fast, doesn't require much effort, and draws on our prior knowledge and past experiences to recognize patterns and arrive at a conclusion. This isn't inherently problematic if you use your intuition to ask questions and seek information. However, the problem is when those without sufficient prior knowledge or experience make conclusions based on bias, stereotypes, or oversimplified explanations from grade school, or just blatant misinformation. Relying on intuition rather than engaging with humility of the unknown, it can lead to harm not only for you, but also for the people around you. If your belief system stems from intuition rather than demonstrable evidence, give us a call because the show is coming right now. Welcome, everyone. Today is already June 22nd, 2025. I'm your host, Dr. Ben, and with me today is the fabulous Sydney Davis Jr. How's it going?
I made a sound and then I realized I was on mute. It's going great. How are you doing, Ben?
pulling a Johnny P. Angel already on this show.
It's going great.
It's going great. So great that we need our own entry sound effects. I wonder how much it would take to get the crew to give us like walk-on music or like walk-on sound effects. Maybe that's asking for too much.
And like canned audience laughter.
It's been a while since we've been on a show together. Anything interesting happen recently for you?
I moved to the hottest city in the United States.
Hey, I used to live in that city. Yeah. So we just barely missed each other.
Right, but it's actually great. Like, I'm not even being sarcastic. It's super great. It turns out I hated humidity my whole life, not heat. So, we're learning as we go. But how have you been? What's new? What's shaking?
It's all right. It's also been very hot here. Not as hot as where you are. Just curious, has it reached the 120s yet for you all, or
Not
is that yet to come?
We got to 115. So
we're getting closer.
So far so good. I was outside in it for like 10 minutes. It wasn't that bad. But we'll see. Talk to me in like 2 weeks, and then I can tell you how I really feel about it.
Yeah, and it is officially summer. So for everyone out there, I hope you all are keeping cool. I know our friend Richard in the UK is burning up over there, but I know the humidity adds an extra layer, so we won't pick on them too much for that.
Right. It does. It does. I was telling him I would prefer 100 degrees here over 80 in Tennessee with the humidity any day.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, this is a call-in show. Get your calls in today. Talk Heathen is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines right now. So get your calls in, especially get them in at the beginning of the show so we have enough time to answer your questions or talk with you on whatever you want to call in about. Call in 512-991-9242, or you can use your computer browser at tiny.cc/callth. And with that, we're going to move into one of my favorite parts of the show, Talk Heathen to Me, question of the week. Let's bring Richard up here. Speaking of the devil himself.
I'm here. Hello. Before we go into the Talk Heathen of the Week section, I want to mention something. On the Atheist Community of Austin Facebook page, we are wont to post videos on there. And there was one posted a couple of weeks ago now with our friend Dan on there. Objectively Dan, host of this show, host and producer of Truth Wanted, a great, great guy. And on that video, he has a little nose ring. And I would say at least 80 to 90% of the Christian comments on there are making no observation about what he's saying on that video, but ridiculing him, slagging him off, and insulting him for having a nose ring. Comments like "you've got a booger" is a very, very common one on there. Really grown up and mature. Well done, Christians. And one chap even suggested that he should be dragged to the water station like a bull.
Okay.
You people who are doing that, you Christians who are doing that, instead of engaging with the arguments, are cunts. call into the show, stop being dickheads, get off your high horse, and give us a call instead of insulting people. You know, they say that there's no hate like Christian love, and you really do demonstrate it sometime. Please stop doing it. Give us a call, all of you, every single one of you who has insulted my friend and the host of this show. I am telling you now, put your fucking money where your mouth is, stop being cunts, and call the show. Right, that being said, it is the question of the week segment. It's time for Talk Heathen to me, where we get the answers for the question of the week. And last week, we asked you, finish the joke. Jesus, Muhammad, and Joseph Smith walk into a bar. And here are our top 3 answers. Number 3, Kaimo says, Jesus, Muhammad, and Joseph Smith walk into a bar. The bar had a surprisingly profitable night.
That's a good one.
That's
actually really good. I like that one.
Yeah, and we have the queen of comedy here judging these. So you have to give us a rating on like from your expert opinion on comedy.
I will allow it.
Number 2. I don't know how to pronounce this. Severely. Oh, please don't shout at me for getting your name wrong. Jesus, Muhammad, and Joseph Smith walk into a bar because William Lane Craig set it so low they were able to step over the bar and continue on. Personal favourite of mine there. Any comments on that one?
No, that one will do. No. I'll allow it. That one as well. It
allows it, so it shall be.
It shall be.
Number 1, Cenold says, Jesus, Muhammad, and Joseph Smith walk into a bar. They each place their orders, but the bartender only understands Joseph Smith.
He didn't, but Jesus was a white American too. I'm surprised he couldn't understand Jesus.
Yeah, and if you've ever been in a Mormon church, you definitely think Jesus was a white American because all the paintings in there describe him very much like that.
Yep, 100%.
The prompt for next week is name a bad time to give God control. So, of course, we're going to pick on you two, as always. Before we let the audience loose on it, what is a name? No, what is a name? I'm going to start that again.
What even is a name? What is a name? Getting very philosophical with this already.
Name a bad time to give God control, Ben.
When isn't it a bad time to give God control? But I mean, there are worse times than others. And I think probably the worst is when you're making adult videos. That's bad time.
Yeah, that'll probably be the most X-rated ones out there if common religious people are anything to go by, and they're sneaky porn watching behind their partners'
But they'll be
backs.
Married.
Yeah.
The people in the porn will be married. So.
Yeah. And they'll turn the lights out when they do it. So. Sydney Davis Jr., what is your answer to that question?
Birth control. That's my answer.
That's great.
Right, if you think you can do better than that, and trust me, audience, you're going to have to work hard to beat that one, please put your answers in the comments below the video. I will see you all later. Have a great show.
I feel like today's show is just for us. Just the audience watching is just, there, but we're just here with each other goofing around.
Oh yeah, for sure. But there are some other people watching us from the background. Let's go to the crew that, makes it so we're not just talking to ourselves in this blank room, because that would be the case. If it were just Sydney and me, this would not be getting out to any of you in the audience, and it would just be us talking to each other in a blank room. So thank you so much, crew, for doing what you do. And with that, let's jump straight into this call.
Let's do it.
I know this is a favorite of Sydney's. Let's talk to Benji, him from Alabama. It sounds like you want to talk about God loves humans more than angels, and also talking about free will. Does that sum up your call today?
Yeah, there was other stuff I was going to try to talk about too, but
All right. Well, let's go to the first. What's the biggest thing you want to talk about first? I mean, we can probably get to, depending on time, maybe get to a few different topics today. But give us your best one.
well, I guess the God loving humans more than angels. At least y'all can hear me this time. I called in last week and nobody could hear me. So, let's see. So I brought it up to my church earlier today. I go to church, but I'm not. I'm an agnostic, so I mean I'm really old school when it comes to Christianity, and the church I go to is very how to put this. I'm not even sure how to describe it, honestly. They're very strict, I guess. I'm not really sure how to word it. But I asked the preacher point blank. I said, why does God love humans more than angels? And also, if you're an angel and you're in heaven, because he was trying to tell me there's no free will in heaven. I'm like, well, that wouldn't make any sense. I mean, at that point, God's just a dictator all over the place. Also, if there's no free will in heaven, then how did Lucifer and 3/4 of the angels in heaven rebel? You know, also it would kind of suck. Like if you're in heaven, you know, and you're stuck there and you have no free will. I mean, that I'd rather be on earth than heaven at that point. Yeah, I was going to get y'all's opinion on it.
So what did they say when you asked that question? What was their response?
Well, it's funny. He was like, he was shocked. And then he said, I'm going to postpone that and get back to you on it later, is basically what he said. And everyone else, because I was in this Bible study class thing with like 10 other people. And I brought that up to the preacher guy who was teaching the class at the time earlier today. And nobody even wanted to look at me after that, because he was asking me stuff, like asking the people stuff. He said, like, what are some of the commandments that, you know, God wanted to keep? And I brought up kind of the stupid ones. I was like, well, you can't have mixed fabrics, and, you know, you can't pick up sticks on the Sabbath. And then he brought up one that kind of, you know, brings the point home. The preacher did. He's like, oh, yeah, and if you have an unruly kid, you can stone them to death. But he said it like a joke. But, that's actually one of the laws.
He's been thinking about it.
But he was trying to brush it off, and then everyone else was surprised because I wasn't reading from a book or nothing. I just know them off the top of my head. So
yeah, Benji, I have a question kind of about all of this. So your initial statement was asking about how, like, why God loves humans more than angels. And I want to pose the question, do you believe that God does love humans?
Well, it's complicated because throughout the Bible, God plagued humans, destroyed, murdered, killed, all kinds of stuff. And, you know, I honestly don't know how to answer that, to be honest with you. Because religion says, yeah, he's love and this and that and the other, but then you get the change in definitions and crap, but that's just stupid. But if God actually did love humans, if he was all powerful, we wouldn't have the problems that we have. You also get into the whole thing of, well, God allows the devil to do it. I mean, any bad thing that happens, they don't blame God. They blame Lucifer, which is just stupid to me. I mean, Lucifer was the highest angel, but God was over him. You know, and if Lucifer would have took God's place, that'd be different. Then you could blame Lucifer because he would be God, essentially. But because God, you know, they don't look at God as, oh, he makes mistakes and all this. I mean, God even said it himself in the Bible. He says that he regrets making humans. He felt bad about it and flooded the whole damn earth. which, if you believe that story, but then you look at the evidence and there's no evidence for a global flood. And then scholars have basically said that it was more like a localized flood. But anyway.
Well, and with that too, you have the issue that if God, so God knew what was going to happen, created humans, knowing that he was going to regret it and then exterminate them, except for one family, and like continued to let the same humanity do humanity again. Like they never stopped doing the things that he wiped out most of them for in the first place. Right. So like his extermination attempts didn't even work. Yeah. So what was the intent in all that is my question. Like, did you want to get rid of them or did you not want to get rid of them? And did you really regret it?
Well, usually the church avoids that. My other thing that I looked at, because my church has this little diagram thing, it's like on the wall, and it has a timeline of all like the biblical people. And according to it, Enoch and Moses and I think Arab and a few others lived hundreds and hundreds of years. But then it has the little line that shows when the flood happened. Enoch lived after the flood for a while, a good bit after the flood. But then I asked the ones that I was with, I said, well, why, if these people live hundreds and hundreds of years, why is it that people are only living, 70, 80 years now, or, maybe 120 or something like that? And people before then lived hundreds of years. And then their answer is, oh, well, the flood happened and it doesn't happen anymore. But yet that doesn't make sense because Enoch and Moses lived past the flood. Well, no, I know Moses did. I don't know if Enoch did. But, and then after that, it gets shorter and shorter. So it's the lifespan and it got smaller and then smaller and then smaller. But that's not how evolution works. If we was living hundreds of years before the flood, we would still be living hundreds of years now. So, I didn't tell them that, but that's how it would work.
Yeah. So Benji, we're talking a lot about things that I think we agree on.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we want to address some of the things we don't agree on as much. So you are. Well, when you called in, you said that you're a theist, and you kind of mentioned being agnostic on all that. What's keeping you identifying as a theist? Like, can we get into the meat on some of that?
Well, the only reason, so I identify as a theist because I believe in limbo, which not a lot of Christians still believe in limbo, but I believe in limbo, heaven, hell, God, and Jesus. I don't believe in the Trinity. So that's one thing. A lot of
Why? What is it about the Trinity that you find unbelievable, but you believe in God and Jesus?
Because it's absurd. Plus, it was made up by the Roman Church. So the idea of the Trinity is that Jesus and God and Holy Spirit's all one, but yet Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus sacrifices himself to himself. I mean, it just doesn't make any damn sense. And I knew. So
you say that about the Trinity, but then, so here's my question. I want to know how you determine what is true and what isn't. So what gives you this information that the Trinity is not true, but that Jesus, God, heaven, hell, and limbo are true? How did you arrive at those conclusions?
Personal experience, knowledge, just being around a long time, doing
what kind of experience?
The Old Testament. Well, I mean, it's like I've died a few times and saw things, but then I know y'all would probably bust that off as chemicals in my brain. The other thing is that
you got me there.
Also, I've read the Dead Sea Scrolls and a bunch of other books, Book of Mary, Book of Enoch, Book of Judas, and a bunch of other ones that were thrown out of the Bible. I don't get why they even did that. When the Roman Catholic Church, when the council came together and put the Bible together, which they don't really teach this crap in actual churches, but the Bible is not just one book. It's a collection of books told over decades and decades by word of mouth, playing the game of telephone. none of the people that's in the books actually wrote the books that they have them in. The names were basically put on there by the church. And then the books that the church didn't like, they threw out and burned and declared heresy. If you read the other books that they threw out, the Bible, it's interesting because it adds more layers to it. Like the giants, the Nephilim, the sons of angels, the watchers, the time that Enoch went to heaven and was shown the secrets of the universe. I mean, there's so much crap that they threw out. And then you have people that say, oh, well, the Bible's the word of God. No, it's the word of man because that's who wrote it. So
then how do you know?
It's not inspired.
So then how do you know if we agree the Bible is the word of man, it's not actually the word of God? Why do you still believe in God, and why do you still believe in Jesus when the majority of the information we have about both come from that book that you also agree was written by people, not by the word of God?
Well, because, my reasons are complicated, but I will say that I don't like the human race blaming the problems on Lucifer because it defeats the whole point. In fact, God did more evil than Lucifer did, especially in the Old Testament. But then people
So why do you believe in this God, though?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I believe in God and all of that, but I know that people's hate or their knowledge is misplaced. I mean, you can't.
But whether or not you like the God, I want to know how you arrived at that conclusion. Because I know you mentioned experience, you mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls, so it sounds like there's a combination of what you see as like textual evidence, and the other side being intuition and your experience, which actually goes very well with the cold open from today, where I talked about intuition and how reliable it is. So which of those sides do you think contributes more to your belief system, or is it completely 50-50 in the middle?
60-40.
Okay, so what's the strongest evidence for you?
Well, I've died a few times and seen. Never went to heaven, but I've seen limbo and stuff. I mean, I've seen spirits and all kinds of other crap. So, I mean, I believe because of that, because of personal experience. Also, personal experience is necessarily first person, so I wouldn't be able to prove that to y'all. Plus, you would dismiss it as chemicals in my brain, like I pointed out earlier.
Well, I think there's a difference between dismissing and explaining. I don't think we would dismiss what you have to say. I think we'd be able to explain it in a way that makes a little bit more sense, that involves chemicals firing in your brain and survival methods of your body and things like that. But I wouldn't say dismiss it.
Yeah, but see, I mean, I'm just going off what I already know about the show and how this works with y'all. Even if I was to, and no offense to both of you, but even if I was to explain a lot of stuff, what I know and how I know it and all of that, you would probably just dismiss it as not enough sufficient evidence to warrant belief.
But let me stop you there. If you know that no matter what you say, it's going to be met with the idea that there are scientific and real world explanations for why those things or those thoughts or those feelings or their experiences happen, why instead would that not be the ticket to exploring that option more and potentially discovering that that's actually the reality, and maybe changing your perspective a little bit based on facts and evidence that exist in reality, as opposed to ideas that are more fluid and based on a book that you said yourself was written by men instead of written by God? Because what you're saying is, well, every time I tell you about my experiences, you have an answer for it. And in my opinion, that's a great opportunity to say, wait a second, maybe somebody can help me understand what it is I've experienced, as opposed to chalking it up to religion. Not in a dismissive way, just in a, actually, what you think might be God and Jesus can be explained by this very real world experience and this very real world scientifically backed opportunity for learning.
Are you familiar? Let me ask you this, because I do have an answer for that, and it's kind of long, so I'm gonna fast track it. One, there was disagreement between scientists and churches long before, decades and decades ago, centuries ago. And what ended up happening when scientists started discovering, a good example, evolution. Okay, let's just go with that. When scientists, Charles Darwin and everyone else discovered evolution, Charles Darwin tested evolution on turtles and a bunch of other stuff and did research. And he dedicated his life to the study of evolution and Darwinism, basically. And so if you look at that and then you compare that to the churches and even parents and things that get involved in that and say, well, I'm not going to let my kid learn evolution, they go with creationism. And so there's been a conflict between creationism and evolution for decades. And so I could sit here and say, well, yes, science has an answer for things, or at best explains things the best it can based on the evidence. And the scientific model changes constantly as time progresses and people learn new things. But then you have the other side of the coin where, and I've dealt with this in the past, philosophers hundreds of years ago basically said that yes, you have science and you can label whatever anything you want to, and it becomes that based on science. But then if you take that, if it's actually something else that you don't fully understand, science wouldn't be able to fix that, because let's say, for example,
I think
there's a misunderstanding of what science is.
Yeah.
Right. Science isn't a way to just apply a label to something, right? It's a way to evaluate the world around you. Like, it's a method, right? It's not an ideology. It's not like evolution is not just something static that has this one answer and doesn't, change its model over time. And you did mention that, but I think framing science and philosophy and religion as like separate, like opposing viewpoints maybe isn't the most accurate way to go about this. And especially because I think maybe if I change the angle a little bit for science, kind of addressing your near-death experiences, et cetera, I think like the point isn't that science has one specific answer and we can just slap a label onto it. The idea is there are possible alternatives. And do we have sufficient evidence necessarily for, slapping this label on it? And like, let's say, if your near-death experience happened, we can't just dismiss it and say it's obviously, brain chemicals. It's obviously a hallucination. We can't necessarily do that. But what we can do is find probability for alternatives and say, what is the most likely cause or the most likely variable contributing to this? And then we can say, do we have the ability to test which one of these is closer to the correct answer? Like, that's what we need to be doing with this claim. It's not, what I don't want you to do, I don't want you to say, well, philosophy sounds like it has a better answer than science. Like, science is a branch of philosophy, right? Like, all of this stems from the same concepts. All of it stems from the same logic, right?
Right. But what I was getting at, science helps you with models, and it helps you see the different options that you have to explain something. What I'm getting at is that it can let's say there's 5 different options for what happened to me. I can sit there and say it's a religious option, and it changes nothing because that's subjective. I could sit here and say, well, I
disagree.
Someone else can say it's my brain chemicals.
Benji, I disagree that it doesn't change anything, because people make decisions based on what they believe is the cause of whatever's happening. Like as a physician, I know people who will decline blood transfusions because they believe that there's a spiritual reason why they can't get them, and then they die. There are people who refuse other treatment. There are people who undergo unsafe treatment because their religion wants them to find a religious solution. Like, so having that framework is important and does make a difference. And so, and again, I think you're putting too much weight on putting it into either the religious box or in the science box or the philosophy box. Like, let's strip all the labels away. Let's strip all of those. So no, like, I don't want to see this as debating science versus philosophy here. Let's take an example of an experience that you had. And let's say, let's just think of what alternatives there could be. Like, what could be the cause of that thing? And then let's evaluate what would we need to do in order to demonstrate whether or not that is true. Does that sound like an okay thing we could try?
Yeah, but the only thing I would say, I mean, if we strip all the labels away, does that not just make everything void and meaningless?
No, it just means that we're not limited by the bias of what we think, because I don't want you to say, oh, well, I'm not going with this is too science even answer. Like, that doesn't matter. All of this is just, is this thing true or not? And what else could this be? It's like if for people who like believe in Bigfoot, like it's the same method you do for that. Like I remember talking to a caller a few years ago about having a Bigfoot like footprint, like just some random animal footprint in like their yard, or like I think they were on a farm or something. They found this footprint in the mud. And we didn't have to overanalyze what method we were using. We just said, hey, what could this be? Could this have been a bear? Could this have been somebody, like, could it have been actually Bigfoot? Could it have been an artist who went in and like made an imprint, like maybe made a sculpture of a Bigfoot foot and then, like, you know, made the imprint to get pictures? Like, there's so many ways we can think through this, and we don't need to be limited by avoiding or favoring a certain school of thought, if you will. It's just us talking through what could be the reason for this.
Right.
Well, I'm kind of already on the religious boat somewhat, besides me being...
Yeah, and so don't you think that you have a little bit of bias in that? Because you say, I'm in this camp, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Because once you start using that identity label with this, or trying to fit yourself into a particular group or a particular set of beliefs, you're limiting yourself to thinking through the problem in other ways. Right? So I want to try to eliminate as much bias as possible first. And then if we end up with a spiritual answer, then we end up with a spiritual answer. But I don't think we have enough, just because what I hear you doing is you had, you say multiple near-death experiences, and then somehow you're getting from that to religious explanation. And all we want to know is, how did we bridge that gap? Because it takes work. It takes work to rule things out. And I don't know if you've done the work to rule out alternatives.
Well, and not only that, but my question would be, if, say, for example, there was a scientific answer that properly addresses every question that you have, why wouldn't you want that to be one of the answers? Why would you be given an answer where everything you want to know is kind of wrapped up and explained, and still want to say, no, I think it's something else. I think it's religion instead. When it sounds like you're not entirely sold on religion either, other than the belief in God and Jesus, it sounds like you have just as many questions for religious authority.
I don't believe in dogma authority, the old, I don't believe that just because a church says it makes it right. And that's kind of what my church is doing, is that they're twisting the word to fit their own narrative. And I didn't say that to the preacher, obviously. And in fact, let me tell you this too. When I
Well, wait, hold on. Wouldn't you say also, though, that potentially you are also twisting things to fit your own narrative? I mean, Ben, am I wrong? Like, that kind of sounds like what's going on here is there's questions being presented, and when there's true answers available that are also anticipated to be scientific, the response from him is, no, probably not that. It's actually this other thing. When that's what he's saying the church is doing as well. So I'm a little bit confused. Like, what is the answer you're looking for if science isn't a good enough answer for you and the church's answers aren't a good enough answer for you? And you say you're agnostic, but you also say you believe in God and Jesus. Is there ever an answer that would satisfy you, I guess is my question.
Well, I have the answers that I already have the answers. Well, for starters,
you do, and that's an interesting statement.
25 minutes in.
you have the answers, but again, I'm trying to get at, how did you get these answers, and how do you know that these answers are reliable? How do we test that they're reliable?
Well, the way that I got my answers was subjective, so there's not a way to replicate and test it like you would with a scientific method. But
so then we have to think about how reliable are subjective methods, right? Like if I had a subjective experience that contradicted your subjective experience, how would we decide who's correct if either of us is correct?
Well, you would, if it's subjective, you wouldn't be able to. That's like if I came to you with a handful of flowers. If I had a bouquet of flowers in my hand, okay, how would you tell? How could you know for sure, with absolute certainty, that I am holding flowers?
Well, you're not going to get to any absolute certainty with anything, and I don't believe that's going to happen. But what you can do is arrive at probabilities of a likely answer. And I would agree that you can't necessarily prove anything with just subjective evidence. You can use subjective evidence in conjunction with objective evidence, but you need to combine them together and still undergo the thought process of what does this mean? What does this information mean? How are we going to utilize this information, et cetera? And I understand you've brought up like this combination before, but that kind of begs the question, what do we like? How do we know that this combination of factors leads to your interpretation of it and your conclusion? Because I've read the same Bible as you. Like I've looked into the Dead Sea Scrolls as well. I haven't had your subjective experience, but based on what I understand about the world, my interpretation is very different than yours. And so how do we meet?
What you just said, your interpretation of the world, right? How do you know that your interpretation of what's real is actually real? I mean, I'm not going to.
I don't. I don't.
Trick.
And that's why I can't rely on experience by itself. I can't rely on intuition by itself. You have to use a combination of different evidence, and you still have to think through what is the probability that these things are accurate. Right. Well, and I think you're looking too hard for a 100% answer. We're not going to get there, but we can get to probability.
Well, and I would actually argue that the example of the flowers may not be a very good example because you have a tangible thing. You have a tangible item in your hands and you're saying these are flowers, and we know how flowers grow. We know where they come from. We know what kind they are. We know what makes them healthy. We know what makes them sick. We know how they get to the florist. We know how all of this works. I've never had anybody come up to me with God and say, this is God. This is a tangible thing. This is Jesus. This is a tangible thing. This is me trying to prove to you that this is real. And I think that right there is why we have so many of these debates and these conversations, because nobody in the history of the world, unless we're talking about the Bible, which we've already agreed was secondhand kind of hearsay written by men. Nobody has ever come up to any other human being and said, this that I have in my hands right here is God, and it's actually God, and now I want to know whether or not you believe in God. If somebody comes up to me with flowers, I say, those are flowers. How do I know? Because I'm touching and I'm feeling the flowers. We can call them whatever we want, but they'll still be flowers. At the end of the day, they still grew the same way. They were still came about the same way.
That wasn't the only point that I had with the flower example. What I meant by the flower example is that you cannot know for certain anything in reality. For all you know, you could be a brain in a jar. Everything.
Yeah, and that's a terrible argument because, yeah, ultimately you can't determine 100% certainty of anything. But I'm telling you, I do not care. I do not care about 100% certainty. I care about probability and real world applications, right? Like, I know when doctors say things, the assumption is that we know, like when we tell you a diagnosis, that's 100% what it is. That's not how this works at all. It is probability. It's like, it is most likely this thing. I'm going to treat it as if it's this thing because I have enough scientific data throughout the years and years of literature to say that this is pretty consistent with what we've seen in the past with this thing. And we have like demonstrable evidence that, you know, this treatment is probably the right one. So it's not, I'm not ever trying to reach 100% certainty. And so I think it's missing the point entirely to say, well, we could all be a brain in a vat. Because yeah, we could, but that's not going to change this conversation.
Well, I mean, you just proved my point, though, because I can sit here and say that, which I did.
No, I promise you that's not what happened.
And my knowledge, I use my senses and my knowledge and what I know to come up with my theory, with my answers. And so I have
Benji,
the best of my
your knowledge,
and,
like, and here's the other thing too. Like, so we mentioned that there's some alternatives, correct, to things, but there's also the other category of the unknown unknowns, right? There's a whole set of variables that we don't even know. So to say that you've arrived at any kind of knowledge, of course, it is kind of overly confident, but with the idea of taking your experiences and what you think you know into an equation, I want to know from that point, how did you arrive at that knowledge? Like, how do you feel that you've obtained that knowledge?
Well, because I learned as I went. And also, I don't understand the phrase think you know, because you either know something or you don't. So you can't really think to know something. You either know it or you don't know it.
No, most things you think you know, because Benji, let's go with this, because you've mentioned that you're kind of not accepted a lot of science's explanations for certain things. Do you think you have knowledge on science? Especially like neurobiology. Yeah. Do you think that you have sufficient knowledge of neurobiology to dismiss claims about it?
I know more science than most people do. I mean, I know how to...
That's not what I'm asking. Do you have sufficient knowledge to make claims about neurobiology? Like, do you have enough knowledge to tell a neurobiologist, hey, you are wrong about this thing, here's how I know?
It depends on what it is. I mean,
neurobiology.
I haven't.
Yeah. So you have. No. So what aspect of neurobiology do you have? Are you confident in your knowledge?
Brain neurology, basically.
Well, yeah, but what part of that?
The frontal lobe, the central cortex, the back, the left hemisphere.
So you know the parts of the brain. Okay, that's very minimal knowledge. Do you have more knowledge than that? Like, do you get what I'm asking when I say what part of neurobiology? Because like there are different topics within a subject. Like if I say medicine, if I say I understand a little bit about medicine, there's lots of things I have zero knowledge on. I guess I can't say zero because like I have like assisted in surgeries and stuff. I'm not a surgeon. I never will be a surgeon. So I can say that I have minimal knowledge in surgery, but I am not proficient in many of the topics there. But I can talk to you at great lengths about the kidneys. So when I say, do you have knowledge in a particular field, someone who is an expert in that might break that down and say, yeah, well, and even if you ask somebody like Forrest, you ask Forrest, like, do you have knowledge on science? He'd be like, which science are we talking about? What topic of science are we talking about?
Yes.
So do you have, like, within neurobiology, like, other than just being able to list out the parts of the brain, could you, like, let's say, like, brain chemistry, because especially brain chemistry related to near-death experiences, do you think you have sufficient knowledge there to have a discussion with a neurobiologist and tell them, hey, your interpretation of my near-death experience is incorrect?
When it comes to near-death experiences, a lot of them is subjective. It's different for every person.
But do you think you know what caused your near-death experience? Like, it sounds like you are relating things to religion. So you are effectively claiming that the neurobiologic etiology for this, being like brain chemistry, is to an extent incorrect. So do you have sufficient knowledge to say that it is incorrect?
So let me ask you this. If you die and you can see yourself, if you stand above yourself and you can see your body, and people have documented that hundreds of times, and did it...
That doesn't mean it's spiritual. That just means somebody had an experience, but people might have similar experiences with sleep paralysis.
Right, but
so if I'm more, yeah,
I think we're also misconstruing having knowledge and thinking we have knowledge, because let me tell you, spend 30 seconds on a dating app of any kind, and you will meet so many people who think and truly believe that they have a lot of knowledge on certain subjects. Be on the internet for 5 seconds, spend some time on Reddit. Everyone thinks they have a ton of knowledge on certain subjects. That doesn't mean they do, right? Like, Dr. Ben, you know things about medicine, but you can back it up with a history of working in medicine. You've done the studying, you've got the title, lots of people, you've got certificates and things that can back up what you know.
And I can cite my sources. That's a big thing. Experts are going to cite their sources for how they got their knowledge.
Right. There have been so many times in my life where I thought I knew a bunch about something, and then I learned I was wrong. But the whole time, I truly believed that I had a lot of knowledge in that area until I was proven wrong. So I think there's a big difference between actually knowing a lot about something and actually having a lot of proven, I don't want to say like certificated, but like awarded knowledge in a subject versus thinking you know a lot. And with respect to my friend Benji, I think that you truly believe you have a lot of knowledge in areas that you don't actually have that much true like studied peer-reviewed knowledge. It's a lot of feelings and personal experience that nobody else can really back up or peer review, and it's a lot of subjective things that lead you to believe sincerely that you have a lot of knowledge in these subjects, when maybe I think what we need to do is say there's a big difference between actually knowing what we're talking about and thinking we know what we're talking about.
Well, that's two different things, though. When I'm saying I have knowledge, right? So let's do this. Y'all's definition of knowledge is probably completely different than mine, just based on the past 30 seconds of what y'all have said. So,
but the problem is, even if our definition is different, we're using the term in the same way, which is problematic.
But I don't need extra stuff to prove that I have knowledge. Knowledge, by my definition, is when you know something. So,
but
that's not a definition.
But again,
that's like, and you're just asserting that you have knowledge,
and that you have definitions.
The problem is you're relying on your knowledge to make claims about the world, right? And we would agree that, like, the application of knowledge is the same. We are both using that term in the same way. You just have the word knowledge doing a lot of heavy lifting for you and not being willing to explain it. See, like if you have knowledge, you should be able to back up your knowledge. And if your knowledge is applicable to the particular situation, you should be able to logic your way through this and be able to make it logically coherent, right? So it should be an accurate model if the knowledge that you have is correct.
I can sit here and tell you stuff, but it's subjective. You either believe me or you don't. So what would the point be of me explaining stuff to you?
That's also not subjective, right? Like if you say these are scientific facts based on evidence and I say I don't believe you, the science isn't the subjective part. That's not subjective. The facts and the evidence will never be subjective as long as they are facts and evidence that are proven by science or history or whatever, true information that can be peer reviewed and backed up through legitimate sources. That's not subjective. Just because I say, no, that doesn't work for me, I don't believe you, that doesn't make the science where it came from subjective.
Well, no, I'm saying I know something, right? I can tell you what I know. You can sit there and say, well, no, I just don't believe you. That's subjective. It's subjective in the sense that even if I tell you something that I know, you could say, well, I don't believe you. So therefore knowledge
because there's certain things that if you say that the sky is purple, like I could believe that your subjective experience is that, but I could also say, hey, you need to see an eye doctor because the rest of us don't see the sky as purple. So there's some disconnect. So even if you have knowledge, your knowledge can be incorrect. Right? Like, I guess I'll return the question. Do you believe that knowledge, that someone's knowledge could be incorrect?
No, because if they know something, they know something.
But that's not
okay. Okay. So then how? So if you're going to say that knowledge is something that is true, that somebody has awareness of and can communicate, how do we know that what you're saying is knowledge and not interpretation?
That's what the definition is of knowledge.
You can't just say it's true because I said it's true. That's what you're doing right now.
You can't make up definitions, man.
You still have, if something is going to move from subjective to objective, you have to have data to support it being objective. So if you're going to say this is knowledge, you have to back that up. How would you convince me that what you are saying is knowledge and not interpretation?
If I tell you that I know something, I don't have to back that up.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
Benji,
you should want to.
I told you that I have full knowledge that, I don't know, penguins are mammals. Would I be wrong? Do I actually know that?
I'm afraid of this answer.
So yes, they are mammals. So that would be a fact. So you would know that.
Penguins are not mammals. What?
That was here. Because when I say I have knowledge, I don't have to back that up. I mean, you might as well be saying if you go to school and the teacher tells you something, you should tell the teacher, well, you're wrong until you can prove it right.
That's what you should tell the teacher.
That's what you should do.
You should tell the teacher that. Yes. You should question everything until somebody can prove it with facts and evidence. Yes, absolutely.
And what the teacher might say, if it's grade school, your teacher might say, hey, yeah, actually, this thing is a bit more complicated than this, but we're learning it simply right now and you'll get the other information later. Because that's often what happens. Because we don't teach kindergartners the depths of like marine biology when we teach them that fish exist, right? Like there are degrees of learning along the way. But if something is incorrect, like a teacher should be willing to change what they're teaching in order to be correct. Like if I said that a fish is a mammal, I would be wrong, and I should not be teaching children that fish are mammals. So,
Well, fish. I mean, when I mean it, so I've actually did that. I've told my teacher stuff that was off subject, but still part of the curriculum, and they would say, "Well, that's years ahead," you know. But that's still knowledge, right? So if, let's say that the teacher says 2 + 2 is 4.
Right, but you got that knowledge from somewhere, Benji. You got that knowledge from somewhere, and that's what we're asking you: is where did you get your knowledge?
Well, I guess God.
Okay. And scene.
And see, yeah. I feel like we're gonna end there. Thanks for calling in, Benji. Yeah. So I know that was a super long call. But if anybody wants to jump in, we do have open lines. So if you want to talk about how you know God is real, or if you want to convince us that fish are mammals, feel free to call in because we've got space. I will do some catching up on the announcements and the patrons of the week. So Sydney, actually, would you like to jump in the patrons real quick?
Yes, patrons of the week. What voice would you like me to do the patrons of the week?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Richard Gilliver. Give your best Richard impression right here, right now.
They're all a bunch of cunts. They're all a bunch of cunts. What's a different one? I cannot do Richard like Richard can do Richard.
You can't do Richard. Secularity, please.
Okay. Top 5 patrons. Oops. All singularity. New Deanne Kearns. Thank you, Deanne. Thank you so much, Deanne Kearns. Dingleberry Jackson. Kalevi Helvetti. J.A. Carlton. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And we have an honorable mention, Russell Jensen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, and then you got to throw in the dance, the dance that he does. I kind of like this series of ACA impressions. Yeah. I'll keep giving you new ones.
Feel like being SR is just being really nice, just being like really chill and really nice.
Just, yeah. Something like that. Yeah, thank you to all the patrons. Again, our top 5 patrons rotate every week, so you could find yourself on this list. If you would like to be on the list, you can go to tiny.cc/PatreonTH. And we also record the Talk Heathen Discord after show for all levels of paid patrons. So if you become a patron, be on the lookout for more content related to that. I have some other very exciting announcements as well. One of them, super duper excited to announce the Bat Cruise this year. Tickets are for sale. We will be going out on August 16th, 2025. Forrest will be there. J Mike will be there. I will be there. I will be actually driving across Texas to go. And I believe that Helen Green is also going to be tagging along for our cross Texas road trip to the Bat Cruise. So you'll see a bunch of people there. It's going to be super fun. Definitely come hang out. Get your tickets at tiny.cc/Bat Cruise. They do sell fast. So definitely show up. And I have to mention too, it's not just like the day of the Bat Cruise. Like the Bat Cruise itself is super fun. But I think what's even more fun sometimes is the shows the day after the Bat Cruise, because we're all at the Free Thought Library, all like watching the shows in real time, and it's super fun. So if any of you can make it out there, I strongly recommend it.
I will be one of the bats.
Yeah, Sydney will show up on the bridge as a bat. Some other announcements. We have been getting some super chats, which we will read at the end of the show. We have a few coming in, but if you'd like to support the show and get Sydney to read your super chat in a secularity voice or in some other voice, feel free to send those in. We also have merch. Get your merch at tiny.cc/merchaca. We've got tees, hoodies, crop tops, hats, tumblers, mugs, great things that you could wear to the Bat Cruise and show off your love for your favorite of the ACA shows, because those of us who are there will be watching. And if you're wearing, I mean, you can wear AXP stuff, whatever, but like in our heart of hearts, we know that Talk Heathen has the best merch. So
Yes.
go grab some of that. Also, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, and leave some comments about your favorite or least favorite callers. And we do have another call. Let's take Stephen, an atheist, they, them from Australia. Oh, no, it sounds like they got dropped. Oh, we'll see if they call back in. Otherwise, because I was getting really excited for that one. But we also, I mean, while we're on the topic of announcements, we can give a shout out to Richard for helping today. He's sitting back in the basement. And if he wants, we can, if this last caller gets back in, we can, I don't know if they're going to retry. But
feel
that
free
being
to
said,
call
Richard,
in the interim, anybody who's listening.
Yeah, if anybody wants to call in while we chat. But I do want to hear any of Richard's thoughts on our call with Benji today.
Yeah. Benji's senses and knowledge don't cross-reference with what we know about reality. I think that's, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that when you talked about the sky being purple. And I think that's the biggest problem with Benji's thing. Benji's whole kind of shtick. And I actually like Benji. I know a lot of people are frustrated by him. I like him. I think he's sincere. And I think he's so close. I think he's so close. He's got some epistemological hurdles to get over. The biggest one being that he thinks merely just having knowledge is enough. It doesn't seem to realize that knowledge, that experience, that subjective experience can be cross-referenced with the rest of reality, with the rest of the human race. And, we have methods in which we can do that. And I think it's important I think he needs to grasp that himself because he's been told it before, and especially, he was talking about the NDEs. I think, I know you've definitely talked to him about this before, Ben. I believe I have as well, but I'm not 100% sure. He knows the mechanism for NDEs. He knows that having an NDE is not being legally dead. He knows this. He's had these conversations. He's agreed with the hosts when they've walked him through and made the points to him. But there's that cognitive dissonance there, which is not allowing him to grasp it. And I don't think he's doing it but genuinely do not think he's doing it on purpose. He needs that realization. And I think he needs to, because he's knowledgeable and he does work in other areas. He's very knowledgeable about the early councils of the church. He's knowledgeable about the Dead Sea Scrolls and different theological concepts. He can do the work. I just think he needs to do it on this. I think he needs to kind of go out and look at some genuine kind of work on epistemology, not having just like philosophy bro conversations on YouTube, but go and look at some genuine work on epistemology and work through it himself, because I think he can do it. I genuinely think he can do it. And listening to that conversation today was so frustrating because it seems that he's so close to doing it.
He has to get that last step. I feel like with Benji, if I understood him correctly the last few times we've spoken, that last step is that there could potentially be no God. There's that last step. It's like he says he's agnostic. He says he doesn't necessarily believe what the church talks about. I think there's still that fear in a lot of people as they deconstruct, as they start to ask questions. There's the fear of the overall idea that maybe God isn't the answer to everything. And if that's true, that means a lot of things that they've been told aren't true. And some people just aren't quite ready to confront the idea that it could all potentially not be true. And I try to be sensitive to that space for a lot of people, because that's a scary place to be, especially when you're not even 100% sure that's where you're at, but other people can see that that's where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, guys, I can see that call's ready for you to take, so I'm going to jump on out. I'm going to let you take it, just the two of you, and I will see you later on.
See you in a little bit, Richard. All right, let's talk to Stephen, they, them from Australia. Hopefully all the tech is working now. Stephen, you are live on Talk Heathen. What would you like to talk about?
Hi, I just was interested in the prompt topic of knowledge through intuition. It's actually, my claim is pretty modest. It's not, intuition is a terrible thing to rely on as far as knowledge. But
Stephen, just real quick, you are a little bit quiet. Can you try to speak directly into your phone? Like maybe just speak up a little bit.
Yep. Hold on. Okay, how's that? Is that better?
That is a lot better. Thank you. But yeah, so if I can summarize accurately for what you previously said, you're saying that intuition is not necessarily the most reliable method to arrive at truth. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct, absolutely correct. But I mean, my claim's pretty modest in that I think that it is an important, well, to me, it's an important, and this is a fairly broad definition of intuition, I would say, in that I think that our feelings can be important guideposts to our understanding. I think that we can be very, and it's interesting to follow the previous call on this. We can be very confident in our knowledge under terrible basis, right? And I'll go into that a little bit. I know you guys covered it a lot, so I won't say too much. But yeah, we can be really confident in our knowledge or our logic. And my experience, I'll tell you what my experience of that as a Christian, like I'm an atheist now, I deconverted about a year ago. But when I was a young Christian, I remember the issue of abortion coming up at a discussion with some friends in a cafe. And although I was very green at that stage, I'd only just converted as a Christian in my early 20s. I hadn't really thought a lot about abortion, but I kind of had this sort of knowledge that, maybe as a Christian I'm not meant to approve of abortion. But I had no intention of presenting those thoughts to my friends at the table, who were none of whom I think were Christian. And that was intuition based, right? I mean, that was based on feelings. That would be an awful thing to tell people if I'm not really sure about it. And the reason that I wasn't really sure about it was kind of based on feeling, right? Mm-hmm. And that was in that dearth of knowledge and understanding, which I took on, that I don't really have good expertise, not good theological expertise, and certainly not good scientific or medical expertise. So yeah, I mean, I think we kind of rely on our feelings a little bit.
I definitely. I'm sorry.
Well, I would say, obviously, the critical and important thing for us to do, and with important questions, certainly before we venture our opinions too strongly, is to investigate. Yeah, and either investigate or stay shut up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the investigation, I think you hit the nail on the head. The investigation aspect of intuition versus knowledge is so important, right? Like, as a woman here in the States, we talk a lot about women's intuition, about trusting your gut. But there's a big difference between I'm walking down the street, maybe it's dark, there's a man walking my way. There's a big difference between this could be like something's not right, I'm going to cross the street just in case this is a bad person, versus I feel like that man is bad, therefore that man is bad, and I'm going to call the police on that man because he's bad, because I feel that way. Right. Like our intuition says, something's not right about what I'm learning in church, or something's not right. Like there's a missing link here. Very much as you said, let me investigate this based on my intuition. The difference, I think, is some people investigate in order to prove their intuition correct and nothing else, while other people use their intuition as a guidepost, like a guidepost on what they should be investigating and why they feel something isn't right or something's missing or something is believable, things like that. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Intuition in itself isn't a bad thing. Basing everything you claim to know and believe and live by based only on intuition is not good and very rarely accurate from the jump.
Yeah, that's exactly my perspective as well. Like intuition is great for using as a jumping board onto investigation. It's like intuition is a great way to notice patterns and to create questions that we can then translate into experimentation and more objective evidence. So I think intuition is valuable. And there's definitely some cases where intuition is fairly reliable, kind of like Sydney is saying, with making the decisions quickly to, walk in areas that are more well lit, or just like instinctively holding your baby and not dropping them on the floor. Like there's certain things that are reliable, but taking that into account, those are reliable not because of the feeling themselves. That feeling comes from experience and prior knowledge. Like I don't know if you both have heard of like dual processing theory, like great kind of way of delineating where intuition is more valuable and where it's not. Like if you have prior experience and prior knowledge that contribute well, you can often autopilot your way through a lot more problems. Like, for example, if you are an expert in a particular field, like let's say you're a mechanic and you've been a mechanic for a long time, you can probably trust your gut a lot more reliably than somebody who has never worked on a car before, because you have that background knowledge, you have that that experience that translates to the current situation, and your probability of being correct with your intuition is a lot higher than that other person. But that's where like CPR algorithms are especially like really nice. Like there's a reason why in emergency medicine, like there are times when if it's an emergency, and we may have lost the caller, but they can go back and watch this. But like in emergency medicine, there are times when you think fast and you just do what your gut tells you to do, but that stuff that your gut is telling you is actually stuff that you learned before. It's your ALS algorithms, it's your CPR algorithms, and it puts all of the evidence into a streamlined, easy form to remember. So you can just go off of your pattern recognition, say, this is this thing, I'm going to do this in response. On the flip side, there are other problems that are less easy to figure out. You don't know the answer. You don't know the cause right away. Nobody's dying, though. So you can take your sweet time thoroughly investigating, using your brain. Oh, you're still here, maybe. Am I still here?
Yes, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
So I missed a little bit. I came back in just where you were talking.
Yeah, no problem.
And
yeah, so I think we're all in agreement that there's some application for intuition, but it's not the whole picture.
Trust your intuition, but investigate why it is you feel that way.
Exactly so, yeah. And I think one of the few things that I've learned, I mean, I think as is often said on the shows, life should be a continual process of learning, and we should always be open to. We should always be open to the idea that we could be wrong, and we need to be open to somebody showing us that. The other thing that has been an important step for me as an atheist. I mean, this was in terms of feelings. That the whole thing about being a Christian for me was that incredibly. I'm trying to think of a better word than the one I'm not going to use the R word, but look, this is actually this is an innocent use of this word. Like, it's the retarding effect of doctrines such as, well, certainly the fear of hell, but also the notion that your enemy, the devil, roams around like a roaring lion, seeing who he can devour. I mean, to me, that spoke of how we were in peril of being deceived by the devil, which is a very, everyone will be aware that that's a very overtly put out their message in church, and clearly with the design of preventing people from investigating, from free inquiry, and smashing that barrier for me was critical. And I mean, like right up until last year, right up until the time that I started into earnest deconstruction, I was still really bound by that. I really didn't investigate atheist content or anything of that kind because I was, afraid of being deceived and stolen away and from the bosom of Christ or whatever. And getting free of that was just critical for me to be able to freely investigate. So you're very quiet there. Have I cut out again?
No. We were just listening.
I just love what you're saying.
Yeah, so this again is where those feelings, like I was talking about, was, oh my God, yeah, that bound me in that prison, that intellectual prison of not being free to have free inquiry. And this is what I think is such a huge thing within that cult environment, really. I mean, I just to say broadly, I think of Christianity wholesale as a cult. I mean, I think that there are sort of much freer and liberal versions of Christianity, but and I guess maybe I need to distinguish those. But the overt controlling doctrines, such as what I've just described. It's a horrific cult that really retards. Well, as there's often been commented on the show, it really retards human growth of. I'm not speaking very well, but growth of knowledge.
Development of critical thinking skills.
Not and societally as well. I think as Christopher Hitchens and others pointed out, that this religion has the horrendous regressive and reactionary dynamics that we're seeing active in the United States, everywhere across in numerous places across the globe, of course, not just from Christianity, of course, but just such a sad effect of all of this, and the lives that are caught up in ignorance and superstition, you can put it that way, but really it's through that fear of free inquiry. And, I've talked a lot.
There's a lot of like cognitive laziness, as I will sometimes label intuition. Like can be a way for people to avoid having to do a lot of the extra work, because it is anxiety inducing to think, oh, I have a burden of proof that I have to meet. Like I have to investigate. I have to put my own brain to this test. And number one, if people have like a healthy level of humility to know that they can't really accomplish that, it is scary stepping out into inquiry and stepping out into having to demonstrate this stuff. And so that's where we get furthermore into the desire to put everything into neat little boxes, like the previous caller, how it was, asking questions is the science perspective. And I already have my religious answer, and like focusing more on the box that it's in and not on the actual content of thinking, like trying to break through some of that and saying, no, we're not trying to push science on you. We're not trying to put a label on this. We just want to think through the problem. Like just think about the problem without any label and go from there. Absolutely. But it takes away of that, the ability to have the us versus them mentality of we are the religious answer, they're the science answer. We're always competing. Like no, we don't necessarily have to compete. Just
Not usually.
use
Right.
the same thought process and just because if you're right, you're right. But show me.
I also think that intuition,
that's it.
I think that using intuition as fact as opposed to just intuition also eliminates a lot of the nuance that comes with intuition. So for example, one of my favorite things to talk about are experiences I've had versus similar experiences men have had, and the entirely different intuitive experience that we had. So I may be walking down the street in a certain city and think, I don't feel very comfortable here. I don't think I'm going to come back. This isn't a great time for me. Specific to my existence, my experiences, the fact that I'm smaller, I'm a female, whereas men who have gone to those same places have said, really, I loved it. I was there all night. The nightlife is great, yada, yada, yada. Both of us are correct in our experience, but that doesn't mean I would be correct in going online and being like, this is a terrible place. It's not safe. It was awful. Trust me, you don't want to go, versus them getting online and saying, it is perfectly safe. Ladies, walk around all night. It is great. Neither one of us are incorrect about the intuitive experience we had, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that going strictly on our intuition opens us to the idea that there's nuance there and there are opportunities for our experience to have been different, maybe at different times, different seasons, different, alone versus with a group, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, Dr. Ben, that you raised that point. I actually hadn't heard about that. I think you said it was dual. I can't remember. It was dual something. But
the dual processing model of thinking.
Yeah, I must look into that. But I think that it's occurred to me, like thinking about this tonight. It's morning here. It's like after 5 a.m. here now. But
oh wow.
There's several things that we should consider. It is, yes, what do experts say? And again, experts get it wrong. And sometimes horribly wrong. So yeah, again, our intuition can be a guidepost, and that's a frustrating thing to say or to accept. But because it leaves us in this kind of place where, yeah, we can cite what the experts, what the consensus says, and usually, look, I would hesitate from saying that consensus, like where a subject has been very well studied and understood. No, I would not really like to prefer intuition to that sort of level of inquiry. But I can think of at least one occasion where certainly some experts preferenced or privileged a kind of belief, really, based on some shonky research that they'd undertaken.
Yeah, and that's where too, people can assert expertise all they want, but what people don't understand is the assertion of expertise and the assertion of authority comes with an extra burden of being able to demonstrate that. Like if you are a college professor and you're trying to teach a certain subject, one of the first things they have you do is give a talk on that subject, like present your information. Like there's a reason they do a thesis and a defense when getting like certain advanced degrees. Like that level of expertise requires you to demonstrate that level of expertise. And it is that you are going to like disseminate correct information to the best of your ability, and that you're going to be humble in admitting when you don't know something. And so when a lot of people will claim to be experts but aren't, it's fairly obvious because like if you were going to claim expertise and not be willing to accept the burden of accountability for what you're claiming expertise for and demonstration of expertise, you're going to look very, very silly. Like it's not a flex that people think it is to pretend to be an expert when you're not.
Exactly so, yeah. On the other hand, you do get amateurs who build a lot of expertise and knowledge. So, but again, that's something that can be demonstrated, obviously, and argued at. And I think the important thing that we're sort of talking around there is this critical thinking skills, which are taught in university, and critical analysis and being able to examine evidence and present your critiques of where you think methodologies have been problematic and so forth. That's part of it. It's expert knowledge, I guess it's that whole project of academic inquiry where we submit our theses, our research to academic peers, and advance knowledge that way. Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement on all this. Like lots of good points across the board. I think we're gonna end this conversation if that's okay with you, just because I think we've hit on all the points. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up before we let you go?
Oh no, I was gonna my summarizing my closing comment would be very glad to have gotten free from those binding thought beliefs that kept me from free inquiry, and very sad that it took me as long as it did. I'm 56 now, but yeah, it's good to be able to.
I'm glad you got there. I'm glad you deconstructed, and thanks for talking with us about this topic. It's been great, and I hope you have a great rest of your. I guess it's not the same day here as it is for you, but I hope you have a great day.
I loved the added detail of investigating your intuition. I think that's so important. The idea that, you may feel a certain way and that may feel true to you. Investigate that. Why does it feel that way? Is that true? How many sources can you find? How many people back up how you feel? They feel the same way. I think there's so many different ways you can use your intuition as a tool, but very much kind of how you described earlier, the lazy version is going, that's how I feel, therefore that's true. And I'm just going to sit with that. And I'm not going to do the work to figure out if it's actually true.
Yeah. And with that, let's bring Richard back up, our great backup host for today, and we'll read some super chats. Richard, do you have any thoughts about that last caller?
Yeah, I actually want to. Oh, just no. Why am I muted?
I think you're still muted.
Oh, I can hear you.
Oh dear. Can the audience hear me?
Audience, chat, can you hear Richard?
So give us a yay or a nay. I don't know why I did it in that voice. That was a silly voice. It might be a silly voice that no one can hear. And I don't know if anyone can hear me.
I don't know. I can. They said they can't hear Ben.
Right. Let's just ignore Ben.
They hear
we'll
Richard
talk.
just fine.
Let me.
Right. Okay. So Sydney, I wanted to address something that Rockboat in the chat said, which was brilliant. And they said we can get to the truth. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. We can get to the truth accidentally, but if you care about truth, you have to use a reliable method. And that's a great paraphrase of the scientific philosopher Karl Popper. Who he said science often errs and pseudoscience may happen to stumble on the truth. And if this is the case, why should we trust science? And then went on to explain why, in fact, we should trust science. And I think it was a great call. I think it was a great topic of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody raised about, or I think a couple of you raised during that call, about people can have expertise without qualifications. And indeed, Kelly Laughlin, our very own Kelly Laughlin, who was a geologist and had published geology papers, has no formal qualifications in geology.
Right.
But he's done the work.
Right.
And he works within that paradigm. He works within that academic framework, and he works to that standard. So, yes, you don't need a formal qualification, but you still need to work within that paradigm and to those academic standards which have been laid down and proven again and again and again to be reliable.
Yes. And when you ask Kelly a question, he has all of this data and information and can cite sources and can tell you the answer isn't just because I feel that way or because because this time I saw one and that's it. That's all I need. I think that's a big difference too between, amateur sleuth versus just going based off intuition. I know more than I ever thought possible about cactuses, about Venus flytraps, about parrots. I have zero, my degree is in writing, but I've done enough research, and people who have done enough research are also comfortable saying, if you don't believe me, here's a bunch of sources you can check out that back up what I'm saying. I encourage you to do that because I also want you to be as informed on this topic as I am, versus, no, I don't really think about it. I don't really ask more about it. I don't check anywhere else because I found what I needed. Confirmation bias. I have one place I go to get my information, and as long as they agree with me, that's enough for me.
Sorry,
go on.
And
the nice thing too, now that my audio issue is fixed, there's definitely like a lot of advantages to being like an amateur and having a lot of self-obtained knowledge on certain subjects. Kind of like I was saying, the burden of expertise. Like sometimes it's really nice to sit back and say, yeah, I want to learn about the subject. I want to talk about the subject, but I'm not going to assert myself as an expert, and I'm not going to take responsibility for whatever I say, and just have the humility and say, yeah, I'm interested in this. Here's what I've learned so far. I could be wrong. Don't go make decisions based on this information I give you. But it's totally, like, it's often nice to have that perspective and not have an extra burden. So if you want to, don't feel like you have to adopt that burden of expertise. Like, have fun with learning, have fun with being curious, and just be humble and say, I learned this on my own. Correct me if I'm wrong. We can explore this together. And that's a great outlook on it.
Right. The number of times per week that I say, I am not a lawyer and I am not your lawyer, but followed by, what I've learned, what I've found, what seems to be the case, I
think it's very interesting from my own perspective as well, because I've been studying religion and philosophy non-academically since I was around 15, 16 years old, and quite in depth over the years. What doing it academically did for me, it didn't necessarily give me any more knowledge on the subjects themselves. What it gave me is the methodologies to correctly analyze and talk about them. And that I learned so much more in a few years of doing that from an academic level than I did from all the many, many years previous to that, where I'd just been gathering this knowledge. And both are good. You need a balance of both. You've got to think, to be successful academically, I think you've got to have that passion for your subject. I think there are many people going to academia without that passion, and I think you can tell in a lot of cases.
Yes, 100%. Oh, Ben is muted for me.
I'm actually muted that time. Okay. I'm just pulling all the Johnny P. Angels today.
Ben trolling us. Let's do some super chats, guys, before the end of the show.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. Richard, would you like to read some of the super chats? Since you've been doing most of the show.
Yeah, I can do. So Zoref Moonpo sent $2 and asked Dr. Ben, what's the worst thing you treated?
Anything with bed bugs. I'm going to say that.
Everybody literally cringed. I don't know if you two were like me then, but I all my intimate body parts started screwing up. Right, okay. So Miranda Rensberger, who has been a member for 1 year, sends $10 and says, some callers caused me to suffer from repetitive face palm injury. I absolutely get that.
Luckily, we have a doctor here who can help you with that.
I treat face palm injuries as long as there's no bed bugs.
Rick636 sent $5. It was always going to be fucking chaos with us three on, wasn't it? Sends $5 saying, great session. I agree. Question everything and knowing how to ask the right questions. That's how you gain knowledge. Absolutely. Free Jimmy, that is going to be pronounced completely wrong. I do apologize. $2. Back Cruise Graphic is a spelling typo in ACA. All Greg's fault.
Paying sent that.
All
you.
Greg's fault. Everybody boo Greg, but he fixed it and he's going to say 10 Our Father and 5 Hail Marys as penance.
He says, no, my intuition tells me it's perfect. I'm not going to change anything. I like it the way it is.
And Free Jimmy again sends a further $5 and says realization is the combination of knowledge and experience from a perspective to reveal a pearl of wisdom. If any piece is missing, that's epiphany.
And then they send another one that says, no, but really, please
understand.
fix that typo. No, but really, here's another $2.
Really?
Please.
Please fix that typo. It's bothering everybody. Yeah, thank you so much for reading those. Thank you to everybody who gave super chats. And just remember, before you leave, remember to, after the video goes live, put in the comment section your answer to the Talk Heathen to Me question of the week. Name a bad time to give God control. Reply in the comments. Tune in at the beginning of next week to hear the top 3 answers. I already thanked Richard, so I could thank him again, but that's a lot. I don't need to inflate his head anymore. But we can do some love rings. Everybody, let's give some love rings out to the love rings have thus been breathed into existence. The breath of life from our Lord and Savior, Richard Gilliver, the producer of Talk Heathen. And speaking of Richard Gilliver, he will be in the after show in the Discord at tiny.cc/ACD Discord if you need that link. Sydney and I are too, I don't know, not cool today.
Right. I told you guys why I won't be there, but I won't tell the audience.
So you get the Richard show today.
I did wonder whether Ben was going to disclose that. Then I was waiting with bated breath to see what came out.
No, it's the Richard show today. So definitely everybody go there and ask Richard why he's hiding that he's Welsh. Make sure to ask that question. All of you ask that question. But in more seriousness, if you don't believe, this is your community. We appreciate all of you being here. Keep asking your questions. Keep being critical thinkers. Keep being humble and admitting when you don't know things. It's okay to not know things. We will all explore this existence together and try to make this world a better place for everyone. And if you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just
not convinced.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/call TW.